class. So you can watch it later and for those who are absent. So again, an acid is a substance formed when the hydrogen in an, a salt is a substance formed when the hydrogen in an acid is replaced by metal ions or by ammonium ions. When you replace the hydrogen by a metal or by ammonium, you get a salt, and you have these different types of salts. Look here, chloride salts you get from hydrochloric acid. Carbonate salts you get from carbonic acid. And nitrate salts you get from nitric acid or nitrous acid. All right, so all of these are the metals you can use, and you replace the hydrogen. And then, do you remember the solubility rules? We went over this. All SPA, what does SPA stand for? You remember that acronym I taught you?
Miss, was it sodium,
Potassium and ammonium. All of those are soluble salts. All of those are soluble salts. And we learned that most chlorides are soluble except for lead and silver. We learned that sulfates are soluble except for lead and barium. We learned that carbonates are insoluble except for SPA, and hydroxides are insoluble except for SPA, and oxides are insoluble except for SPA. So these are the solubility rules. Now, the reason why you need to know this is because we learned how to make insoluble salts. So you need to know the difference between a soluble salt and insoluble by memorizing this table. So you just need to know in your head. If it's a group 1 salt, SPA salt, sodium, potassium, or ammonium, from that is in the name, it is soluble. If it's a nitrate, it is soluble. If it's a chloride, it's soluble except lead and silver. If it's a sulfate, it's soluble except lead and barium. And then if it's a carbonate, hydroxide, or oxide, it's insoluble except for group 1 and SPA and ammonium. All right? So you need to memorize this. So for example, let me just choose something and ask you if it's soluble or insoluble. So based on these rules that are listed here, is sodium hydroxide soluble or insoluble? Sodium hydroxide. Sodium hydroxide. Is it soluble or insoluble? Tell me.
Soluble.
It's soluble. Tell me, why is it soluble, Lorianne?
Because sodium is in its name.
Right, and anything with sodium is always soluble. Even though hydroxides are insoluble, you know, but once it have sodium in its name, it's soluble, no matter what. All right? All right, let me ask Jonathan. Copper carbonate. Copper carbonate, is that soluble or insoluble?
insoluble, Miss.
Why is copper carbonate insoluble?
It's because copper isn't soluble.
Well, copper can be soluble sometimes if it's copper sulfate, but you have to know that carbonates are insoluble.
Yes.
Right? Except the group 1 metals or SPA. All right, let me ask Dominic now. Dominic, tell me, what about zinc nitrate? Is that soluble or insoluble? That's zinc nitrate. Is it soluble or insoluble, Dominic? Dominic, I'm not hearing you. Say that again. No hear nothing at all. Or type it in the chat. zinc nitrate. I don't hear anything and I don't say anything, Dominique. You're typing it in the chat? It's soluble. Okay. Can someone tell me why is zinc nitrate soluble? Because nitrates are soluble. Good. Except, well, you have no exception. All nitrates are soluble. All nitrates are soluble. All right, excellent. Who is next now? I asked, Lori, I asked Dominique. All right, Tajan, what about this one? Magnesium sulfate. Magnesium sulfate. Soluble or insoluble?
Soluble, miss.
Soluble? Why?
Because most sulfates are soluble except for lead and barium.
Very good. Very good. Excellent answer. Excellent. You're on the ball. All right, Othniel, you are next. Tell me if this is soluble. Which one is soluble? This one. Lead chloride. Soluble or insoluble? Othniel. Lead chloride. Soluble or insoluble?
Miss, can I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Miss, it's insoluble.
It's insoluble. Very good. Because chlorides are what? Soluble except for?
Except for lead and silver.
Except for lead and silver. Excellent answer. All right, so we are on the same page. So as I said, all nitrates are soluble. Once you have nitrate in the name, it's soluble. Once you have sodium in the name, it's soluble. Once you have potassium, ammonium, it's soluble. SPA. Just remember SPA. SPA. All right. Now, carbonates, as I said, are insoluble except SPA. Sulfates are soluble except lead and silver. And all chlorides, most chlorides are soluble. Iodides and bromines except for lead and silver. So these are them. Lead and barium for sulfates are not soluble. So this you know already, and you have the handout. Now, what we are going to be going into a lot of detail is how do you make these salts in the lab? And we approach the end of fourth form, we're going to start doing SBAs now, and you will have to make some of these salts. Obviously, we are not back at school, so a lot of things we'll do some of them when you're at school if you ever go back, and some of them you can do at home through simulation. All right, so now we spoke about making insoluble salts already. We spoke about that at length last term, and so this term we're going to focus on some ways of how to make soluble salts. Right? Now, as I told you before, to make an insoluble salt, you take two soluble salts, mix them together, and you will get a precipitate. Do you remember what we say the word precipitate means?
No, miss.
What is a precipitate?
Miss, is it like the remainder of what's left after you've evaporated something?
No, but that's close. A precipitate is really a solid substance that you get when you mix two solutions together. So it will float out or it will solidify. So a precipitate is a solid substance, which is what the barium sulfate is, because it's an insoluble salt. So you have these two soluble salts, you mix them together and you get a precipitate, which is an insoluble salt or a solid substance. So the first thing you need to do is to choose 2 soluble salts with the cation and the anion of the salt you need. And you'll mix them together and you will get your precipitate or your insoluble salt. So for example, you want to make the salt lead chloride that is insoluble. What 2 salts will you choose? What 2 soluble salts can you choose to get lead chloride? What 2 soluble salts can you choose to get lead chloride, class? Hello?
Miss, I want to say lead. Give me 1 second, miss.
Now, I want you to remember, it's going to be lead something and then something chloride. All right, that is how you're going to get the lead chloride in the end. So you're going to choose a salt that is always soluble. Now, which salt is always soluble without exception? Nitrates.
Lead nitrate, miss. Yes.
Right, nitrate. So you're going to choose lead nitrate because all nitrates are soluble. And then what chloride can you choose? Something that's soluble.
Potassium.
You can choose potassium, you can choose sodium, or you could choose ammonium, right? And all of those are good choices, okay? So that is how you would make an insoluble salt. You choose 2 soluble salts to make it. All right, so here they choose sodium chloride and potassium and lead nitrate. All right, so you just mix them together, stir it around, and then you filter it, meaning you strain off the precipitate. So the precipitate or solid or insoluble salt will be in the top here of your filter. It's called your residue. And then you can dry it and cause the substance to crystallize, and you will get your salt. All right, here I have barium sulfate, which is another insoluble salt. What 2 substances can you choose to make barium sulfate? What 2 substances? Sorry?
Barium nitrate.
Barium nitrate, good. And what?
Mr. Sodium.
You can use sodium sulfate. All right, so those 2, excellent. All right, so let us look at what if these substances are soluble. Sodium carbonate, is sodium carbonate soluble or insoluble? Class, sorry?
Soluble.
It must be soluble because it has sodium in there. You should answer fast, you know. You should be answering very quickly, so it must be soluble. And then what about copper nitrate? Soluble or insoluble?
Soluble.
It must be soluble because all nitrates are soluble. Tell me lead sulfate.
Insoluble.
It is insoluble because all sulfates are soluble except
Lead.
and barium,
Barium.
right? Zinc hydroxide.
Miss, I think it's insoluble.
Insoluble, miss. Insoluble.
It's insoluble because all hydroxides are insoluble except spar. And then last one, calcium chloride.
Soluble, miss.
It's soluble. Most chlorides are soluble. All right. So sorry about that writing, but you get the point. All right. So that is it. And then I gave you this exercise as well. Now, For your, I'm going to pull up the activity that I gave you. Hold on. Okay, this is Google Classroom. Okay. All right, so this is the activity I gave you in Google Classroom. Oshana did it, Ravi, Dominic, Kiana, Lorian, Ramina, Tajan, and JDL. These people here, so don't do it. Look at them. Othniel, you sit down in here, you don't do it. Jonathan, you sit down in here. Oh yeah, Jonathan, you texted me. All right, so this is the activity. It says you are provided with samples of lead nitrate crystals. So is that soluble or insoluble, class? Lead nitrate. Is lead nitrate soluble or insoluble?
Soluble, miss.
It's soluble. So you get a soluble salt, lead nitrate, and you get sodium chloride, which is also soluble. And they're asking you to plan and design an experiment to make lead chloride. So you're making an insoluble salt, which is lead chloride. So you're going to write a step-by-step procedure and write what materials and apparatus you will need. So what would be the first step? What would be the first step in your procedure? How would you make lead chloride? What would be the first step?
Miss, find the 2 soluble salts.
All right, but you already get them already. What are the 2 soluble salts?
Miss, I don't remember.
See them here in a question. Lead nitrate crystals and what? And sodium. You know, see them in the question? Are you confused by what we're doing?
No, miss, it's just that my eyes, because the letters are so big, miss, and the computer is so close to me, I can't really see it that well.
All right. Okay. So anyway, you have 2 crystals, but look, the first clue is that you have crystals. So you can mix up 2 crystals and get your lead chloride. No, you can't do that. Because all you're going to do is just have 2 mix up crystals. Right? So what do you need to do?
Miss, pick one crystal.
You have to make them into solutions. You have to mix them up with water first. Do you understand? Remember, I just showed you the picture where you have the solution and you just pour them together, right? So the first step for this is that you have to get the sodium chloride crystals and the lead nitrate crystals, and you have to dissolve them in water to make solutions. Is that clear?
Yes, miss.
Right. Now, what would be step 2? After you have 1 beaker or 1 cup of lead nitrate and you have 1 cup of sodium chloride solution, what will you do with them after that?
Mix them in a beaker.
Yes, you're going to mix the 2 solutions together. And when you mix them together, you will get a, what is the P word we just learned? You get a precipitate of the lead nitrate. Sorry, you get a precipitate of the lead chloride, right? Which is what you're trying to make. Now the lead chloride will be floating in there with which other substance? So follow me now.
Sodium nitrate.
It would be sodium nitrate. Very good. Very good, because you have, look, you have lead nitrate, and you have sodium chloride, right? So you're trying to make lead chloride, which is going to be the precipitate. So that will be solid, but you're also going to form what? Sodium nitrate, right? Because you see, look, lead. Look, you have a lead. Okay, Jonathan. Look, you form lead chloride. You see that? So what is left? Sodium nitrate, sodium nitrate. All right, so that is what is going to be in solution, but this will be the precipitate. All right, so when you get your precipitate now, you have your container, you have the precipitate floating in there with your sodium nitrate. You need to separate it. What will you do?
Filter it, miss.
You have to filter it. And after you filter it and you get your residue, what do you do with the residue?
Put it to dry, miss.
You dry it and make it form crystals and you finish. So tell me now, for part B, what are the apparatus and materials?
Beakers,
You
filter,
need beakers. What else?
filter,
Filter funnel, filter paper. What else?
something to stir
Water.
the solution with.
You need a stirring rod. You need water. And you need your crystals, right? Your lead nitrate crystals and your sodium chloride crystals.
Yes, miss.
All right. So that is the activity. I want you to go and do it and stop stress me.
Miss, I did it already.
All right. Very good. You get it right? I'm going to mark them shortly.
Yes, miss. Of course it's right, miss, because it came from the internet.
All right, look here. You see, if you're Googling something and you don't understand what you're looking for, then it don't make no sense.
Miss, I read it over until I started understanding it.
Okay. So again, you mix the two solutions, you filter it, then you place the residue to dry, and you're done. All right, that's it. Okay. So we're going to stop here. And next class, when you come, we're going to talk about soluble salts now. So we're done with insoluble salts, and we're going to go full speed ahead on how to do soluble salts. So I already sent you this PowerPoint. So I want you to go through it. You have several different ways to make soluble salts. So I want you to go through it and try to understand the information. And then after that, we will go through it together, and then I will give you another activity on it. So do you have any questions about what we studied today? We reviewed how you can know if something is soluble or insoluble, and we reviewed how to prepare an insoluble salt. Any questions, guys?
Miss, I have a question, but it's not about the lesson.
Oh, go ahead.
Miss, can we go to the board of Victor Dixon, ask for extra chemistry hours, please?
Well, if I had any hours in the day, believe me, I would give it to you, but I don't have no time. So that's a problem too. All right. So guys, the other thing is what I'm going to do, I'm going to start to do is I'm going to record the classes, which I'm doing now. And then I'm going to upload it to YouTube and send you the link so you can go and watch it over and over again. All right. So you can go to my channel and subscribe. I have like 3 subscribers, but I don't care about that. But I just want you to have the information so that you can go back and watch every time.
Miss,
All right.
Miss, you have like 3, miss. That's 3 more than me.
Right. So I'm gonna let me just stop the recording right now, and then I will upload the